On a misty autumn evening, the ruins of Blackthorn Keep stood shrouded in fog, an ancient silhouette against a bruised sky. The stones, worn and weathered by centuries of wind and rain, whispered secrets of a time long past. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, mingling with the faint metallic tang of rusted iron. Within this desolation, a solitary figure moved with purpose, Thomas Hale, an archaeologist whose life had become entwined with the shadows of forgotten histories. Thomas paused at the threshold of a collapsed archway, his lantern casting a feeble glow that danced over the crumbled masonry. His breath formed clouds in the chill air as he knelt beside a recently unearthed fragment of broken armor. The metal was tarnished, mottled with verdigris and streaked with the grime of centuries. Yet, amid the ruin, there was a story waiting to be told, a tale embedded in the shattered remains of a knight whose legend had long haunted the surrounding countryside. Locals spoke of the Dismembered Knight in hushed tones, their voices trembling with superstition. They whispered of a warrior torn apart in a violent end, his spirit restless amid the stones of Blackthorn Keep. The scattered armor, the broken sword hilt, the fragments of a once proud crest, each piece was a fragment of a puzzle Thomas was determined to solve. The air, heavy with the musk of moss and ancient stone, seemed to hold its breath as he prepared to delve deeper into the earth's reluctant secrets. The site itself was a tangle of history and decay. Once a formidable fortress perched atop a rocky promontory, Blackthorn Keep had succumbed to the ravages of time and conflict. Its walls had witnessed sieges, betrayals, and the rise and fall of noble houses. Now, only rubble remained, a mausoleum of stone and sorrow. Thomas's excavation was more than a quest for artifacts, it was a pursuit of truth buried beneath layers of myth and memory. As he brushed away the soil from a jagged piece of plate armor, Thomas's fingers traced the faint outline of a heraldic symbol, an emblem worn by knights sworn to protect the realm. The discovery sent a shiver down his spine. This was no ordinary relic, it belonged to a man whose story had been twisted and lost in the mists of time. The weight of history pressed upon Thomas, a reminder that beneath the romantic veneer of chivalry lay darker realities. The night deepened, and the fog thickened, curling around the ruined stones like a living thing. Thomas's lantern flickered, casting long, trembling shadows that seemed to stretch and warp with a life of their own. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional drip of water seeping through cracks and the distant hoot of an owl. In that stillness, the past felt close, almost tangible, waiting to be heard by those willing to listen. Locals had long avoided Blackthorn Keep after dusk, their superstitions fueled by tales of restless spirits and curses. Children dared one another to approach the ruins, only to flee at the first creak or whisper of the wind. Yet, beneath the folklore lay a kernel of truth. This was a place marked by violence and betrayal, where honor had been shattered as completely as the stones themselves. Thomas's thoughts drifted to the stories he had gathered from village elders, a knight betrayed by a trusted ally, left for dead amid the bones of the fallen. His body had been dismembered, his limbs scattered to warn others of the dangers of loyalty misplaced. It was a brutal fate, one that defied the ideals of knighthood and chivalry. Yet, it was precisely these grim realities that Thomas sought to uncover, to peel back the layers of legend and reveal the human tragedy beneath. The cold seeped into his bones as he worked, the lantern's glow revealing more fragments, shards of chainmail, a broken sword guard, a leather strap frayed by time. Each piece was a testament to a violent end, a silent witness to the cruelty that had unfolded in this forgotten corner of the world. Thomas carefully catalogued the finds, his mind racing with questions that demanded answers. Why had the knight been so thoroughly destroyed? What political machinations lay behind his demise? And how had the story been preserved, distorted by fear and superstition, over the centuries? The weight of these questions settled heavily in the night air, mingling with the dampness and the shadows that clung to the ruins. In the flickering light, Thomas imagined the knight as he once was, armored in gleaming steel, standing resolute against enemies both seen and unseen. Yet, that image was shattered by the grim reality beneath the earth, a body torn apart, a life ended in betrayal. The contrast was stark, a reminder that history often conceals as much as it reveals. As the night wore on, Thomas's excavation uncovered a small, weathered parchment, its edges brittle and stained. The ink had faded, but faint words could still be discerned, a fragment of correspondence, perhaps, or a note left in haste. The find deepened the mystery, hinting at secrets kept hidden for generations. It was a thread that, if followed, might unravel the tangled web of loyalty and treachery that had led to the knight's grisly fate. The ruins of Blackthorn Keep, bathed in moonlight and mist, seemed to hold their breath, as if awaiting the unfolding of a story long suppressed. Thomas, driven by a mixture of curiosity and reverence, knew that he was on the cusp of something profound. The earth beneath the stones was more than a graveyard of armor and bone, it was a repository of human drama, a silent chronicle of betrayal and honor lost. As dawn approached, the fog began to lift, revealing the full extent of the desolation. The broken walls stood like sentinels over the secrets they guarded, and Thomas prepared to continue his work, aware that each discovery brought him closer to the heart of a dark and tragic tale. The knight's story was not just a relic of the past, it was a mirror reflecting the fragile nature of trust and the devastating cost when it is broken. In the quiet light of morning, the ruins whispered once more, their voices carried on the wind to those who dared to listen. Thomas packed his tools with care, the fragments of armor and the faded parchment secured safely. The investigation had only just begun, but already the knight had revealed a glimpse of the truth buried beneath Blackthorn Keep, an unsettling truth that promised to challenge the myths of chivalry and honor that had long cloaked the knight's fate. In the flickering torchlight of a great hall long vanished beneath the weight of centuries, the story of Sir Alaric began, not as a tale of betrayal, but as one of valor and unlikely friendship. It was the late 13th century, a time when kingdoms were forged in blood and loyalty was the currency of survival. Sir Alaric, clad in shining armor emblazoned with the crest Thomas had uncovered, was known across the shires as a knight of unwavering courage and steadfast honor. His name carried weight not solely from his prowess on the battlefield, but from a bond forged in trust with Lord Edric, a nobleman whose power rivaled the very crown. Alaric's rise was not marked by mere martial skill, but by a loyalty that transcended rank. Born to a lesser family but gifted with a sharp mind and a fierce heart, he earned his place beside Edric through countless battles and shared hardships. Their friendship was forged in the crucible of war, where the clang of steel and the cries of the fallen shaped men as much as bloodlines. They fought side by side in campaigns against marauding invaders and rival lords, their swords striking in unison, their lives intertwined by a mutual dependence few could understand. Lord Edric, a man of imposing stature and keen intellect, was both a patron and confidant to Alaric. Their alliance was more than political, it was personal. Edric entrusted Alaric with delicate missions and counsel, valuing the knight's judgment and loyalty. In return, Alaric offered not only his sword but his unwavering faith in Edric's vision for their lands. Together, they navigated the treacherous waters of court intrigue and feudal rivalry, their friendship a rare beacon of trust in a world rife with suspicion. Yet beneath the surface of camaraderie, subtle tensions simmered. Edric's ambitions grew, his gaze fixed beyond the borders of his domain. The nobleman's desire for greater power was a flame that flickered behind his eyes, sometimes casting shadows over his judgment. Alaric, ever loyal, found himself caught between duty and unease. The knight's honor demanded obedience, but his instincts whispered warnings of the cost that unchecked ambition might bring. This quiet discord, unnoticed by many, was the first fracture in a bond that seemed unbreakable. In the great hall, where banners hung heavy with the weight of lineage and loyalty, moments of respite were rare but precious. Alaric and Edric shared conversations beyond the battlefield, talks of governance, of justice, and the burdens of command. They laughed and debated, their friendship a fragile sanctuary amid the chaos of war. Yet, even in these moments, the undercurrent of political maneuvering was never far away. Allies were made and lost with a word, and trust was a fragile construct tested by every decision. A particular evening, as twilight bled into night, bore witness to a subtle shift. Alaric returned from a scouting mission, bearing news of a rival lord's movements. Edric received the report with measured calm, yet his eyes held a gleam that unsettled the knight. "We must act swiftly," Edric declared, his voice low but resolute. "The time for caution has passed." Alaric nodded, sensing that their alliance was poised on the edge of transformation, though he could not yet see into the depths of the coming storm. The bond between knight and lord, once forged in mutual respect, was beginning to strain under the weight of ambition and the allure of power. Edric's vision expanded beyond defense and stewardship, it reached into the realm of conquest and dominance. Alaric's loyalty was tested not just by commands, but by the ethical boundaries that defined his sense of justice. The knight wrestled with the conflict between obedience and conscience, a battle as fierce as any fought with sword and shield. As the seasons turned, whispers of dissent grew among Edric's vassals, their loyalty wavering in the face of his relentless pursuit of power. Alaric found himself increasingly isolated, a solitary figure caught between his lord's ambitions and the fractured allegiances of the court. The knight's once unshakable trust in Edric began to erode, replaced by a cautious vigilance. Yet, the ties of friendship and duty bound him still, a chain that neither time nor suspicion could easily sever. The story of Alaric and Edric was not merely one of friendship but a reflection of the complex interplay between personal loyalty and political ambition in a fractured land. Their alliance embodied the fragile balance between trust and betrayal, honor and expediency. It was a relationship marked by shared victories and unspoken doubts, a partnership that would ultimately be tested to its breaking point. In moments of solitude, Alaric contemplated the path he had chosen. His sword was pledged to Edric, but his heart was heavy with unease. The knight's sense of justice clashed with the growing ruthlessness of his lord, a tension that gnawed at the foundation of their bond. The camaraderie that had once defined their relationship was giving way to suspicion and fear, emotions that would soon culminate in irrevocable consequences. The late 13th century landscape in which they moved was one where allegiances shifted like sand, and survival depended on a delicate dance of power and loyalty. Within this volatile environment, the friendship of Alaric and Edric stood as both a testament to and a casualty of the times. Their story, preserved in fragments of armor and whispered legends, was a microcosm of the broader struggles that shaped an age defined by conflict and conquest. As the last light faded from the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood red and ash, the future loomed uncertain. The bond between Alaric and Edric, once a source of strength, was poised to unravel. The knight's loyalty would soon be confronted by the harsh reality of betrayal, a rupture that would echo through the ages and leave scars etched deep into the stones of Blackthorn Keep. For now, however, the tale remained one of companionship and trust, a fleeting moment of harmony before the storm. It was in this fragile interlude that the seeds of tragedy were sown, seeds that Thomas Hale, centuries later, would uncover beneath the ruins, piecing together the shattered legacy of a knight whose courage endured even as his loyalty was shattered. The night air was thick with a biting chill as the events that would shatter the fragile bond between Sir Alaric and Lord Edric unfolded in cruel silence. It was a night unlike any other, veiled in darkness not just by the absence of moonlight but by the treachery that lay beneath the surface. The knight, once a beacon of unwavering loyalty, found himself ensnared in a web of deceit spun by the very man he had trusted most. Alaric had been dispatched on a covert mission, one cloaked in secrecy and urgency. His task was to infiltrate a rival faction's encampment, gather intelligence, and return swiftly, an assignment that required both cunning and courage. The shadows of the forest cloaked his approach, every step measured and silent, the weight of his armor muffled by the moss and fallen leaves beneath his boots. Yet, unknown to him, the path he tread was no longer safe. The trust he had placed in Edric had been fatally compromised. Edric's ambitions had grown unchecked, his hunger for power eclipsing the bonds of friendship and honor. Behind closed doors, he had issued secret orders to eliminate Alaric, viewing the knight's steadfast loyalty as a potential threat to his ascent. The mission was a trap, a calculated betrayal designed to dispose of a once faithful ally whose conscience and honor no longer aligned with Edric's ruthless designs. As Alaric moved deeper into enemy lines, he was ambushed by a band of mercenaries, silent shadows armed with blades and malice, their faces obscured beneath hoods dark as the night itself. The knight fought valiantly, his sword flashing in the scant moonlight, but the odds were overwhelming. The mercenaries struck with brutal efficiency, binding and dragging him away from the battlefield he had sworn to protect. The ensuing hours were a torment of pain and despair. Alaric was subjected to a cruel fate, torture inflicted not by strangers but orchestrated by the man whose trust he had given without question. The mercenaries, acting under Edric's command, inflicted wounds meant not only to kill but to send a harrowing message. The knight's body was broken, his limbs severed and scattered, a grotesque tableau meant to serve as a warning to all who might challenge the Lord's authority. News of Alaric's capture and horrific mutilation rippled through the lands like a dark tide. His closest companions, knights and servants who had shared his trials and triumphs, were plunged into grief and rage. The betrayal ignited a fire of vengeance within them, a desperate resolve to seek justice for their fallen comrade. Their sorrow was deepened by the cruelty of the act, a deliberate dismemberment that violated every code of chivalry and honor they held sacred. The dismemberment was more than physical mutilation, it was a symbolic execution of loyalty itself. Edric's calculated betrayal shattered the ideals that had once bound them together. The scattered remains of Alaric were left exposed as a warning, a grim testament to the price of misplaced trust in a world where ambition eclipsed fidelity. The brutality of the act echoed far beyond the immediate circle of friends and foes, resonating as a chilling reminder of the destructive consequences wrought by political intrigue. Among those who mourned, the pain was compounded by the realization that the treachery was not born of necessity but of cold calculation. Edric had chosen to sacrifice the knight's life to secure his own power, betraying the very principles upon which their bond had been founded. The act was a profound violation, a rupture in the fabric of feudal loyalty that sent shockwaves through the noble houses. The knights who had sworn to protect Alaric's legacy now bore the heavy burden of remembrance. They recounted tales of his bravery and honor, determined to preserve his memory against the tide of oblivion. Their grief was a silent rebellion against the cruelty inflicted upon their friend, a refusal to let his sacrifice be forgotten or diminished by the passage of time. The political landscape, already fraught with tension and shifting alliances, was forever altered by the fallout from Alaric's demise. Edric's action sowed distrust among his vassals and peers, fracturing the fragile coalition that had sustained his rise. The betrayal underscored the perilous nature of power, where loyalty was a commodity to be exploited and human bonds were sacrificed on the altar of ambition. In the aftermath, whispers of Alaric's fate grew into a legend, a dark parable of trust betrayed and honor shattered. The scattered remains, once a symbol of brutal warning, became a haunting reminder of the costs exacted by treachery. The knight's story, preserved through oral histories and fragmented records, survived as a testament to the devastating consequences of political machinations that valued power above all else. This betrayal was not merely a personal vendetta but a reflection of the ruthless dynamics that governed feudal society. It revealed the fragile and often treacherous nature of loyalty, where alliances were as transient as the seasons and honor could be discarded when inconvenient. Alaric's fate exposed the harsh realities behind the romanticized ideals of knighthood, revealing a world where trust was precarious and survival demanded ruthless choices. The grim tableau of Alaric's dismembered body, limbs scattered and armor broken, was more than a physical atrocity, it was a dark symbol of the collapse of the knightly code. It challenged the very notions of chivalry that had long been celebrated in song and story, confronting the living with the brutal truths that history often conceals. As the years passed, the memory of that fateful night persisted in the collective consciousness of the region. The tale of Alaric's betrayal became a cautionary story, recounted around hearths and in halls, a somber lesson on the perils of misplaced trust and the devastating cost of political ambition unchecked by conscience. The echoes of Alaric's suffering and the treachery of Edric lingered in the stones of Blackthorn Keep, etched into the very earth where the knight's remains were scattered. These echoes would one day draw the attention of a modern seeker of truth, whose painstaking efforts would uncover the silent testimony of bones and broken armor, a testament to a tragedy born of loyalty betrayed and honor destroyed. The morning sun filtered weakly through the thinning mist as Thomas Hale resumed his excavation at Blackthorn Keep, the weight of history pressing upon him with every shovelful of earth turned. The scattered fragments of armor, once mere curiosities, now began to coalesce into a grim narrative, a tale of loyalty and betrayal etched into bone and metal. Carefully, Thomas uncovered a collection of skeletal remains, their fragile whiteness stark against the dark soil. The bones were broken and displaced, yet unmistakably human, their arrangement telling a story both tragic and violent. Among the debris, a battered shield bore the faint but discernible heraldic crest that had first drawn Thomas to the site. This emblem, worn by knights sworn to protect the realm, linked the remains to Sir Alaric, the valiant figure whose name had lingered in local legend for centuries. The discovery was a breakthrough, a tangible connection to a man whose fate had been obscured by time and myth. The process of piecing together Alaric's story was slow and meticulous. Each artifact, from splintered wooden fragments to rusted sword hilts, was catalogued and examined, revealing clues about the knight's final hours. The broken bones bore marks inconsistent with battle wounds, deep, precise cuts and fractures suggesting torture rather than combat. These injuries spoke of a betrayal more personal and calculated than the chaos of warfare. Near the skeletal remains, Thomas uncovered fragments of parchment, their edges curled and stained but still bearing traces of ink. The faded script hinted at correspondence, clandestine messages that, when deciphered, revealed a web of intrigue and secret orders. The document suggested that Alaric's mission had been compromised from within, that those he trusted had conspired to ensure his downfall. The evidence pointed unmistakably to Lord Edric's hand in orchestrating the knight's demise. Local legends, once dismissed as mere superstition, gained new weight in light of these findings. Tales of the Dismembered Knight became more than folklore, they were echoes of a grim reality concealed beneath layers of time. The physical evidence corroborated the stories of betrayal and mutilation, transforming whispered fears into historical fact. Thomas's careful excavation uncovered not only the remains but also the instruments of Alaric's downfall. Broken weapons and discarded armor fragments bore the scars of conflict, yet their placement and condition suggested a staged scene, an intentional display meant to serve as a warning. The scattered nature of the bones and artifacts reinforced the narrative of dismemberment, a brutal punishment inflicted to punish and intimidate. The juxtaposition of the knight's once proud armor with the desecrated remains beneath it was a stark reminder of the fragility of honor and the harshness of political machinations. The artifacts told a story that history books often glossed over, the exploitation of loyalty and the ruthless elimination of those who stood in the way of ambition. As Thomas pieced together this narrative, he confronted the uncomfortable reality behind the romanticized image of knighthood. The ideals of courage, honor, and loyalty were often compromised by the brutal demands of power and survival. Alaric's fate was a testament to the dangers that lurked behind the chivalric code, a world where friends could become foes and allegiance was a fragile, expendable bond. The discovery also shed light on the broader political landscape of the time. Edric's betrayal was not an isolated act but part of a pattern of ruthless strategies employed by nobles to consolidate power. The clandestine correspondence revealed plans and counterplans, alliances forged and broken in the shadows. These machinations underscored the precariousness of trust in a world where betrayal was a tool wielded as readily as the sword. Thomas's findings challenged the sanitized narratives of medieval valor, exposing the darker truths hidden beneath the surface. The tale of Sir Alaric became a mirror reflecting the complexities of human nature, the interplay of loyalty, ambition, and the capacity for cruelty. His story, preserved in bones and broken armor, spoke across the centuries, demanding recognition and understanding. The excavation site itself seemed to resonate with the weight of this revelation. Each uncovered artifact was a voice from the past, a fragment of a story that had long been silenced. The stones of Blackthorn Keep, once mere backdrop to legend, now bore witness to a history that was visceral and raw. Thomas felt the profound responsibility of his task, to honor the memory of a man betrayed, to bring clarity to a story obscured by time and fear. As he documented the evidence, Thomas reflected on the power of history to reveal not only triumph but also tragedy. Alaric's story was a cautionary tale about the costs of loyalty in a world where trust could be weaponized and honor sacrificed. The knight's shattered remains were a testament to the enduring consequences of betrayal, a reminder that the past is never truly gone, it lingers beneath our feet, waiting to be uncovered. The artifacts and remains collected at Blackthorn Keep would become the foundation for a deeper investigation into the nature of feudal loyalty and political intrigue. Thomas's work promised to reshape understanding of the era, challenging the myths that had long obscured the harsh realities faced by men like Alaric. His discoveries illuminated the personal and political dimensions of a story that was as much about human frailty as it was about historical events. In the quiet moments between uncovering fragments and recording findings, Thomas felt a connection to the knight whose life had ended so brutally. The painstaking process of excavation was more than archaeology, it was an act of remembrance and redemption. Through the careful reconstruction of the past, he sought to restore dignity to a man reduced to scattered bones and broken armor, to give voice to a story of courage betrayed. The morning light grew stronger, casting sharp shadows over the excavation site. Thomas packed away his tools, the collected artifacts secured for further study. The revelation of Alaric's fate was only the beginning, a starting point for a journey into the intricate web of loyalty, betrayal, and power that defined a turbulent age. The silent testimony of bones and faded parchment awaited interpretation, their secrets poised to challenge long-held perceptions. As the ruins settled once more into stillness, the echoes of the past lingered in the earth. The truth unearthed beneath Blackthorn Keep was a somber reminder that history, with all its grandeur and tragedy, is shaped by the choices of individuals, and that beneath the veneer of legend lies a complex, often unsettling reality. The fading light of day cast long shadows over the excavation site, where Thomas Hale stood amidst the scattered remnants of a past both distant and deeply human. The story of Sir Alaric, pieced together from fractured bones, rusted armor, and faded parchments, resonated far beyond mere artifacts. It was a meditation on loyalty, betrayal, and the fragile nature of legacy. As Thomas surveyed the unearthed fragments, he reflected on the profound cost of trust broken. Alaric's fate was a stark reminder that loyalty, often celebrated as the highest virtue, could become a double-edged sword, binding individuals to causes and people that might ultimately betray them. The knight's dismemberment was not just a physical mutilation but a symbolic shattering of faith, a brutal testament to the dangers inherent in placing trust where ambition lurked. The fragile alliance between Alaric and Lord Edric illuminated the complexities of human relationships within the volatile landscape of feudal power struggles. Their friendship, once marked by shared battles and mutual respect, had been undermined by unspoken tensions and the corrosive influence of political ambition. It was a cautionary tale about the delicate balance between personal loyalty and the impersonal forces of power that shape history. Thomas considered how history often preserves the grandeur of noble deeds while obscuring the pain and betrayal that accompany them. Alaric's story revealed the shadows behind the shining armor of knighthood, the vulnerability of even the most valiant to the whims of those who wield power without conscience. His shattered remains, once scattered as a warning, now stood as a solemn memorial to the human cost of political intrigue. The excavation had also unveiled the ways in which stories are shaped and reshaped over time. Local legends had transformed Alaric's tragedy into folklore, blending fear and reverence into a haunting narrative of the Dismembered Knight. Yet, beneath these tales lay a historical truth that challenged romanticized notions of honor and chivalry. Thomas's work bridged the gap between myth and reality, restoring depth and nuance to a figure long reduced to superstition. In the broader context, the betrayal of Alaric was emblematic of a society where loyalty was mutable and often subordinated to ambition. The ruthless calculus of power dictated alliances and enmities, leaving individuals vulnerable to exploitation and sacrifice. This harsh reality echoed through the ages, reminding modern observers that the dynamics of trust and betrayal are timeless, shaped by human frailty and desire. Thomas felt the weight of responsibility that came with uncovering such a narrative. His role was not merely to catalogue artifacts but to honor the memory of those whose lives had been caught in the tides of history. Through careful scholarship and reflection, he sought to give voice to the silenced, transforming broken bones and faded ink into a story that could teach and warn future generations. The legacy of Sir Alaric, reconstructed from the earth beneath Blackthorn Keep, was a testament to the enduring impact of betrayal and the fragility of human bonds. His story urged vigilance against the allure of unchecked ambition and the costs of misplaced trust. It was a reminder that legacies are shaped not only by noble deeds but also by the darker shadows cast by human frailty. As twilight deepened, Thomas gathered his notes and artifacts, the echoes of the past lingering in the cool evening air. The ruins around him, once silent witnesses, now seemed imbued with the weight of memory and meaning. The story he had uncovered was more than history, it was a mirror reflecting the timeless complexity of loyalty, honor, and the painful consequences when those ideals are broken. In the quiet that followed, Thomas allowed himself a moment of contemplation, recognizing that the past is never truly past. It lives on in the stories we tell, the lessons we heed, and the legacies we choose to preserve. The tale of Sir Alaric, etched in bone and stone, would endure as a haunting reminder of the fragile thread upon which trust and honor hang, and the ruin that follows when that thread is severed.